Welcome. This is take two of the first of a series of videos for the Cisco CCNA CyberOps class. I think I have all my puppy squeaker toys put up. I think we've got a quiet environment now, so let's try this. Um, this is one of the very powerful tools that they've included in this is the CyberOps workstation. And later on in the course, we'll get into that. Right now, what I want to talk about is getting it into VMware. Um, the way that the lab was actually originally set up, they set it up in Oracle's Virtualbox. Nothing wrong with Virtualbox. Um, the Both of them are type 2 hypervisors. They run on top of an operating system. You have to have Windows installed or Linux or Mac, and it runs as an application on top of it. However, we've got VMware Workstation installed in our classroom, and we use it for most of our other programs. There are issues when you try to install VirtualBox and VMware Workstation on the same machine, primarily in the area of the network interfaces. Since we are members of the VMware IT Academy program, you can get a 1-year evaluation license you can install on your home machine. You'll notice when you have it fired up, it'll say right here, it's not a real license, but it does work like one. You should have gotten an email beginning of when you started the program from me setting you up. If you didn't, let me know and I can either resend that, or if for some reason I missed it, recreate that for you. So you will have that. You're welcome to do either VMware or VirtualBox at home. We're not going to cover the installation of either one. You should have had experience installing software by now. Basically, we're going to focus on converting and setting up the CyberOps workstation in VMware. You're going to need a couple things. You're going to need the OVA file. You can download that from the lab itself. There's a couple things that you're going to use in here out of this lab. These minimum required resources are true for either one. You don't need to install VirtualBox. You will download the image from here. You'll import. We're going to cover the rest of this material. We're going to cover it for VMware. When you're going to jump down to step 3 and complete the lab from there. Be aware, these are not like some of the other labs where they're fillable. You can have a couple options. You could either open this in Adobe Acrobat and use the fill and sign option, or you can open it in Word and convert it to Word, which is what I've done here, and then just type over it. Okay, but that's for another day. You should know how to do that by now. We're also going to use a live CD called Gparted. We're going to use that to increase the size of the partition. I'll show you that here a little bit later. Here's a link for that OVA, a little definition of OVA. Basically, it's a file format that all the hypervisors use to exchange virtual appliances. Very handy. There are several ways to import that OVA. You can either right-click the file and open with the workstation or the VirtualBox, either one. Or the other way you can do that is through the virtual VMware workstation. Go to open, click on the file. Now this takes several minutes once I hit open. Now you'll notice that it's going to rename. It's going to use the name of the file to name it. You can change that name if you want to. Notice that this is probably different from your machine. I've got this on drive 6. What I suggest doing is going in under preferences and changing this. By default, this is going to try to put all your files under user, your account, documents, and a folder for virtual machine. I don't like putting it there. In the classroom, for one thing, you need to put that on drive D. That way, if we have to re-image the operating system, all your virtual machines are intact. The other thing is, if you're ever in an environment that is an Active Directory, they use roaming profiles, it tends to try to sync all those across the network, and it makes starting your profile up very complicated and time consuming. So we're going to go ahead and import this. One of the things you're going to see is that there is actually going to be, here's the virtual machine. Actually, I don't have it here. Okay, we'll go ahead. There's going to be an error. It's going to come up and tell you that it does not match the OFV specifications for compliance checks. Okay, we're going to relax it. We're going to say, okay, we're going to hit retry, and it's going to work. So I'm going to pause this, and we will come back when it gets through in just a second. Okay, we're back. You'll notice that it's imported my virtual machine and added it to my inventory over here on the left. Also notice that it includes a description with some information about this virtual machine. If you're like me and you build a lot of these virtual machines, and sometimes you don't work with them for a while, you forget things, this is a real good idea. Some of the important stuff is Arch Linux, which I'm not as familiar with. I do mostly Ubuntu, Debian, CentOS. It gives you your username and password. It tells you what software is installed. I'm going to go in and I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to increase my RAM. This is going to be optional. It'll vary depend on your machine. I'm also going to go in processors. I'm going to add one. It just makes it a little snappier. I'm going to come back over here to make sure that's in the network adapter is in bridge mode. I'm going to go ahead and enlarge my hard drive. I ran into some issues. They have shrunk the hard drive to make it easier to back up and copy and send across the network. I may want to install some stuff later, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to expand that to 10 gigs. Now, note, this only extends the hard drive. The partition itself, we're going to have to come back and do some magic to get that to convert over. I'm going to expand this. I'm going to go ahead and pause this while it runs, so it actually takes a little longer than it appears to you guys. Okay, notice that I have 10 gigs here. Now, pay attention to the CD IDE. See, it says using unknown backend. I'm going to go ahead and fire this up, and you'll see the error message it would give you, and then we'll talk about how to fix that. We're going to go ahead and power it on. And it gives you an error message about the IDE drive and how it is being addressed. Pull that up where you can see it a little bit better. Basically, the IDE slave, there's a slave, there's no master. That won't work. So you're going to have to change this IDE 01 to IDE 00. And there's two ways to do that. One is in the configuration manager. I'll show you that real quick. We'll go and shut this down. We'll go into edit virtual machine settings, come down here, and we'll go to advanced, and you can actually change that here. I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to actually go in and manually change that because I want to do something else. I'm going to find the VMX file. Now I'm going to open this with Notepad++. This is if you haven't seen Notepad++, this is a great tool. It has lots of features, lots of add-ins. Right now, the important thing is it does not input any control characters or formatting. No. Okay. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in here. And put in BIOS boot delay. Why is that not? Let's try Notepad. Why is that coming up? No. Okay, there we go. It was keeping my old version in here. I'm going to come in and I am going to add a line here. It's bias.boot delay, and I'm going to set that to 2500, 25,000 probably. What that does is that gives you longer to access the BIOS. If you don't, you got to be really, really fast. And I'm not that fast. This just makes it easier for me. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down and find my problematic device. Copy that. I'm going to come in and search, and I'm going to replace that. I'm going to replace it with IDE 00, and I'm going to replace all. Okay, I'm going to close that, and come back, and I should be able to power this on. It doesn't have anything on the host. You want it connected? Yes. I'll say okay. Notice how it's giving me, I can actually go in here and go in and boot, but if I don't, it's just really, really, you gotta be really, really, really fast. So basically this is just showing you the same thing where I'm adding in, changing those, these are all the instances, added the boot delay in. Then, okay, we're going to be able to actually start up the virtual machine and log in. One of the first things that I try to do on these is I will go into settings, display, and bump up the resolution. I pretty much, my default now is 1360 by 768, and apply that. And at that point, you can do the Control Enter, make and I could actually make it bigger on this screen, but I'm going to leave that with that way. Okay, now you can actually go in and look at see, these are the three applications that are installed in the menu. You're going to need that later for the lab. Put that down. Okay, one of the things that I did do pretty much straight out of the box, and you got to use sudo on this to do anything. If I can get my password in here, it's CyberOps. Notice in media there's only a downloads, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a CD-ROM directory. That's creating a mount point. Okay, now I've got a place I can mount things. This is talking about the resolution. We've already showed you where to do that. Okay, we're going to start configuring the interfaces for the. If you'll notice, if I do an ifconfig, notice it does not have one coming up. I need to figure out what the names it has named it, and it is ENP2S1. I still call them all ETH0, ETH1. I need to learn this new nomenclature. I believe the EN is for Internet, Ethernet. I'm not sure what the rest of it's for. I'll have to find out. But for right now, we now know the name of the device we want. Now we're going to look. There's one of the nice things about Arch Linux is that it stores the IP settings for different interfaces in files. So what I'm going to do is do a list etc, and they are in the net control directory, but they're actually under examples. Now notice they have one for Ethernet, DHCP, and Ethernet, and it's both static. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this DHCP one over to a file with the same name as that interface. So I'm going to do copy etc. Ethernet DHCP, and I'm going to copy it to etc net control en P2 S1. What did I do wrong? Oh. Okay. And I don't think I've added the rest of this into the then I'm going to have to I'll have to add this to the PowerPoint. I'm going to have to sorry, let me copy. I'm going to have to enable and turn on and then I'm going to have to start. Okay. Okay, now my interface is up. It's pulled an IP address. Let's ping something just to, let's do Yahoo, just to see if it's working. All right. Okay, get out of that. This walks through the examples. I forgot to add in the two. Oh, that's the other thing I forgot. It helps if you go in that config file and change the interface name. It's not required, but it sure helps just for documentation purposes. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to go in and we're going to update the packet manager. Now, this is a new one on me. It doesn't use RPM or app. It uses something called Pacman. And we're going to go ahead and first thing we're going to do, we're going to update the database. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open the, install the Open VM tools. Okay, let's say yes. If for some reason you start getting error messages, something about signatures, let me know. I've had those problems. I've showed how to update the rings. This time it's actually asking me to update that, which should solve the problem there. That works fine. Okay, and I'm going to reboot, make sure everything works. Now you'll notice we're getting an error about some loaded modules, failed to load kernel modules. Those are for the for the VirtualBox tools, and I need to do some research. I'm not sure how. There's a couple ways you can install those. You can either install them from scratch, or you can install them from there's an ISO that comes with VirtualBox that has the appliance tools on it, and you can install and uninstall. I'm going to have to do some research about getting. It's not going to hurt anything. It's not loading them, so it's not actually in place. Again, CyberOps is password. We're up and going, rocking and rolling. You can start. Actually, you can use the internet to do the next lab where you're doing some research. I'll go ahead and refresh it. Okay, rocking and rolling. Come on. Oh. We may need to do something about updating this, but for right now, it won't hurt anything. That's it, guys. Again, you're going to be looking at these tools. You're going to start playing around. I get notice this is going to be a little bit different from a lot of what you're doing. It is running actually a different desktop interface environment. It's running XFCE, which is one of several lightweight environments. It's not going to have all the tools that you're used to. It's not going to have all the bells and whistles. So it's going to take some getting used to. It's great. I use it a lot on servers. And typically what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll install it and then turn it off. So it's initiating, the initiation sequence is bringing it up in the command line network only. But if I need something that I need the GUI interface, I can fire it up. It also makes VNC. You can do a remote desktop to your servers from Windows boxes. There's some nice stuff you can do with it, but it does, like I said, it does take some getting used to. So that's it for today, and we'll come back and we'll start on the next lab. Probably not going to do the research labs. You can do those on your own, but all the technical labs I'm going to try to do. All right, have a beautiful day, unless you got other plans.